Oh, and now I'm very happy to have our third Pennsylvania representative, and that's Brian Sims. Brian, come on in.
Hi, Amber. How are you?
It's been too long, Brian. This has been a dream come true for me, I want to tell you.
Well, a dream come true for both of us.
Well, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. No, Brian, I've become aware of you for a long time now because I'm a follower of Joe My God, the blog Joe My God, and I know he likes to feature you. I don't understand why, but he does. But so I've been following you. So, or some would say stalking, but I'd say follow.
Amber, I got your emails, and you're going to hear from my lawyer.
So Brian, tell us where do you represent from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'm a representative. I represent Center City, Philadelphia, the sort of downtown, the parts of the city you see when you drive into Philadelphia, all the skyscrapers in City Hall.
How long have you been a state representative?
I was just elected to my 5th term, so I'm going into my 9th year.
Wow, how cool. What got you interested in going into politics?
Bad government. Like a good number of my more current colleagues, I live in a state that lacked all LGBTQ civil rights and still does. And part of that was because we had never elected anybody openly LGBTQ to our legislature. And I tried for a number of years to do that. Oh, you can hear my dog. I tried for a number of years to do that, and then unsuccessfully, and then decided to run myself.
How cool. Now, did you win the first time you ran?
I did. I won by 233 votes against a 28-year incumbent, and I'll never forget that number.
Wow. A Republican incumbent? Or was it...
Not a Democratic incumbent.
Oh, so you bucked the system right away.
Yeah, I know. I think for a lot of people, it'll sound very familiar to have lived in a city that has had a Democratic Party that has stagnated a little bit. And I thought that's what had happened in my state, and I still feel that was the case.
How cool. Very good. Now, in this past year, you did have a primary opponent.
My dog is here, and I'm like, oh, you knock it off.
You had a primary opponent, and tell me about that.
I kind of always do. And part of that is, listen, this is Philadelphia. We're the city that wrote the rules for representative democracy in America. And I happen to represent, a lot of people will tell you they represent the best district in their state, but I think I do. My district is chock filled with some of the great experts and some of the hardest working people in this state. And so that we have robust elections every single cycle. That was something I knew going in, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've won 5 races. I didn't walk through any one of them.
Very cool. So now let's get up to more current speed now. I think it was back in May, the Speaker of your House had a little episode. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I live in what's largely considered to be the last great gerrymandered state in the United States, meaning that despite the fact that there are a ton more Republicans or a ton more Democrats in this state, Republicans control our legislature, including the Speaker of the House. And back in May, after months of originally denying COVID, denying the veracity of COVID, denying the need to wear masks, we learned that the Republican leadership found out that we'd all been exposed to COVID-19 right before sending us home for the holiday. And we learned that from a reporter and really had to pry information out of the Speaker. And I went back to my office one day in the Capitol and flicked on my camera and tried to explain what was going on, and without losing my cool. And I wasn't so successful at it. At the end of it, I called for him to resign. I did the same on the House floor later on, as I explained to my Republican colleagues why what they did was so wrong. And inevitably, he did resign. Resigned a couple of weeks later.
Wow, how cool is that? Action. And you've had a little skirmish the past 2 weeks too, haven't you?
Well, this will sound very familiar to you. You know how often LGBTQ people of color, immigrants, we get used as sort of the tip of the spear in a lot of fights. And I think that's been the case certainly in my legislature. I have a colleague, a senator who is a retired U.S. Army colonel, a former professor at the U.S. Army War College, who was instrumental in the drumbeat leading up to the attack on the Capitol on the 6th. He was a speaker before that and a speaker at the riot the day before. And, he used campaign funds to bus people from what he calls his army, Mastriano's army, to the Capitol that day. And while, we don't know yet if he was carrying a weapon, he hasn't answered that. We do know that, things like seditious conspiracy, sedition, treason are real, real terms of law, not just terms of art, and they have elements. And I believe his behavior has risen to those elements, and I think he should be prosecuted, and I think he should be expelled from the General Assembly.
Wow, that is shocking. Well, or is it? I mean, Pennsylvania is, that was one of the states that finally put Joe Biden over, which we were very thankful for. So, how are things in Harrisburg right now?
They're complicated. There's no question about it. You mentioned that you had our lieutenant governor on the show, John Fetterman. Yeah. John Fetterman, aside from being the lieutenant governor, one of his duties is that he presides over the Senate, and that Senate is Republican controlled as well because of gerrymandering. And, on the first day of session during swearing in, they booted him out of the room, so to speak, and they refused to swear in one of our elected Democratic colleagues. And that's just under no degree of understanding of the American Constitution. Is that a part of how we're supposed to be governed? And so things are complicated, no question.
Amazing. Now, are you in Harrisburg right now?
I'm not. I'm back at home in Philadelphia. I got home a couple of days ago, and I'm actually going to be down in Washington, D.C. over these next couple of days.
How exciting! In any official capacity, or as?
No, just there to participate and to sort of watch history be made.
That is very good, very cool. So, what would you like to see brought up to the Pennsylvania House in this coming term?
Amber, you're going to have to repeat yourself. Forgive me. Maybe it's Philadelphia because my signal's not so bad. I'm here in a city.
Okay. What would you like to see the Pennsylvania House pass this year? If you could say, I want this taken care of, what would it be?
Sure, that's an easy one. There's a number of things that still lack in Pennsylvania, some of the really basic fundamental civil rights that lack in Pennsylvania, including non-discrimination for LGBTQ people. We're a state, frankly, that really needs to address the fact that we have fracking without a fracking tax, that we have a $2 billion structural deficit, that we underfund education. But this is going to be the big year for equality, and equality means, not just equality for the LGBTQ community. I think we need to make certain that we're addressing criminal justice reform in very substantive ways in these next few years with the opportunities we have in D.C.
Yeah, one of our state representatives, Brian Chia, just commented. He goes, "I think we have it bad in Vermont," and then I hear from my colleagues from around the country and say, "It's not so bad here."
Yeah, well, it's funny. I have friends that are in legislatures all over the country, and this stuff is complicated even on the best of days. And to work in a place like I do, where the ideas are ideas that the state supports, but that have no chance in a capital like ours because it is so illegally, unconstitutionally conservative. It was a really complicated thing. For the longest time, I was the only out person in my legislature in a place that still to this day denies us equality. And so, it's complicated, but I suppose I have a reputation from not backing down to challenges like this. And it's by and large why I'm there.
Okay. So, Brian, what was your career before you became a politician?
I'm a civil rights attorney. I spent my whole life kind of having the benefit of knowing what it is that I wanted to do. And so after college, I went to law school to practice civil rights. I have a degree in international comparative law, but I moved back to Philadelphia and worked for the Philadelphia Bar Association and then ran Equality Pennsylvania for a number of years before I left and decided to run for office.
Now, is a representative, is that a full-time job? Or?
Yeah, yes and no, and forgive a lawyer's answer, or maybe a legislator's answer. We are technically by law not a full-time legislature, although the work that we do is pretty full-time. There are part-time legislatures that are truly paid a part-time salary, and I have I'm proud to say that this is the work that I spend all day doing. But I have colleagues that are still have relationships with law firms. Some are accountants, some are small business owners. So yes and no.
All right, Brian. So I guess next year in 2022, it's going to be a big year in Pennsylvania. You've got an open governor's seat. You've got an open Senate seat, open lieutenant governor's seat probably, and there's always a congressional seat that's open up. Anything happening in your life?
You don't miss a beat, do you? There's a lot of very exciting opportunities coming up in Pennsylvania. And I think one of the things that people have seen, not just this last year, not just these last couple of weeks, but obviously this last 4 years, is that our politics needed to change, that we needed politicians that not just represent more of us and represent us in ways that we hadn't been represented before, but politicians that understand that we actually need to put substance before decorum, that we need to make sure that we're not backing down from really serious challenges. And And so, I look around the people in Pennsylvania that could fill these roles, and I look at these roles, and I feel very good about the future of Pennsylvania.
Well, how cool, Brian. You have our support, Now, who are you backing anyone for governor or senate? Have you?
I am excited. I'm fairly certain that the next governor of Pennsylvania is going to be a gentleman named Josh Shapiro. He's the current Attorney General of Pennsylvania. He's a pretty incredible guy. I've known him for a number of years in a number of different capacities. And when I look at what's going on around the Commonwealth and sort of what we could do about it, he's the kind of person that I'd feel really honored to vote for as my governor.
And for Senate?
Right now, listen, our Senate seats is a wide open race. What I know is that there's a group of women in Pennsylvania, based out of Philadelphia, who decided years ago that they were going to bring down Pat Toomey, that they had had enough of our Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who was a no-show, and they started Tuesdays with Toomey. And every single Tuesday, without fail, with consistency, they showed up at his offices. They drove him first out of his office in Philadelphia. They drove him to another office. They started showing up at his offices around the Commonwealth. And I just talked to them recently, and I can say very honestly that the reason he is not running again for his seat is because of what these people did. And so what that shows to me is that if they can bring down a U.S. senator, anybody can be a U.S. senator, and especially from this group of really hardworking activists and advocates that we've got right now in the state.
Well, I tell you, we're all going to be watching Pennsylvania because, it's purplish, but we know it can be shoved over to blue as well.
We're lavender.
As only a gay man would say. Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Anytime you want to come back on and talk about anything, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. Let's definitely do a follow-up. A couple of months into this new administration, we're going to be really excited about what's going on.
And I do... take some pictures of Washington and send them to me. We'll show them next week. But I do want to say, I remember one year down in Provincetown at the boat slip, our friend Rayal had one of the rooms upstairs, and we were on his balcony looking down. I went, "Oh, who's that?" That's Brian Sims. I knew back then who you were.
Amber, I think I still have that ginormous bra that you threw at me, and I'm glad that we brought this full circle.
Very good. Brian, thank you so much.